fellow Falcoholics. Welcome to another Falcons training camp recap. It is day 4. I was on site and am joined by the editor-in-chief, the big boss man, the master himself, Dave Choate, not living in a world of darkness today. Dave, how are you doing?
In the world of light today, so that's good.
Yes,
It's
it's a
going
rare,
well.
a rare look. Yes, Dave
I
does, go outside sometimes.
I was outside a little while ago, actually, mowing
Yeah,
the lawn, so that's almost as exciting as training camp.
almost.
Almost.
Got to take care
Yeah.
of the lawn. And
Yeah.
speaking of lawns, guys, I'm sure you're really interested. The Falcons training camp lawn, immaculate. So, uh, but yes, we're actually going to talk about players in football today, not just lawn care. We're going to save that for the lawn care pod coming
Yeah,
soon.
that's
Um,
fair.
but yeah, guys, thank you all for tuning in this whole time. Thanks to everyone interacting on Twitter and on other spaces. It's been a lot of fun. And I know you guys have been enjoying the coverage, and we're glad to bring it to you. Welcome in Don and Tyler and Debo Williams, everyone else for joining us. I know we met some of you guys at camp today as well. We said hi to a few more of you, so that was a lot of fun. Um, Adnan sends his regards. He is working on some other stuff, so he's not able to join the show today. I guess that's okay. If you can only be on 3 out of 4, I guess that's all right. But thanks to Dave for stepping in. So Dave, lots to talk about. I'm sure you've seen my tweets and other things. I guess that what I would start with is I got constantly asked about Frank Darby because I think Frank Darby's a big fan favorite player. And he was a little bit quiet during yesterday's open practice. Didn't hear a ton about him from the 2 closed practices either. Today, however, Darby was one of the stars of the show. Had a touchdown in 11 on 11, had a couple nice catches, really made a name for himself, really stood out in a good way today. What is your takeaway from Darby sort of bursting onto the scene now on the 4th day of training camp?
I think it's great. I think, one of the things that I've been most interested in seeing from your observations from camp is just how crowded that receiver group seems to be. And so, seeing Darby stand out in the early going here, even if it's sort of one out of a couple of days, is a positive because I think he's going to need to stand out. I think the Falcons have enough interesting guys at the back end of the depth chart here that, unless he is consistently impressing now when the pads go on in preseason, he's probably going to be, he's going to make the team. I don't expect him to be mothballed on the practice squad or anything, but I don't see him carving out a major role without impressing early and often. I think, it seems to me like Austin Trammell. We haven't decided, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna get this. I am talking to Scoop here for those tuning into live. I'll be talking to Austin Trammell. That's the first question I'm gonna ask. His wide receiver coach from Rice reached out, and we're gonna speak later this afternoon, so you can look for that as well. But that is one thing we're gonna get to the bottom of. But yes, Austin. I'm going to go with Trammell for this show, and we'll see if I'm right. Yes, another big standout in the wide receiver corps.
Yeah, a lot of these guys, I feel really badly. I know how to spell their names. I don't always know how to say them, so that's on me. But yeah, but I think he's been a standout. Lamade's been a standout. Christian Blake obviously is always in the mix in training camp and into preseason. So looking at this group, I'm rooting hard for Darby. I think almost everybody is. He's got that infectious enthusiasm. He's certainly a skilled player, but he's going to need to keep that up, I'd say.
Yeah. And honestly, that's kind of been a theme, I think. And part of that is, I've only been on site at the 2 open practices so far. And I think the team, knowing that a lot of fans like to see catches, they like to see offense. I know a lot of fans have questions about the defensive line too. But we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. But front and center basically was 11 on 11 and receiving drills and all this. So we got to have a really good look at the wide receivers. And I would say that the competition is very fierce for those bottom spots on the roster. And I know we've talked about on some shows and some of the podcasts with DW as well that, it seems like this is a year where they might consider keeping just 5, but I don't know how you're going to leave the 6th one off because there's so many guys that could be deserving of that spot.
Yeah, and I think it is interesting to think about that because we expect Cordarrelle Patterson, obviously, not only to make the team, but to have a significant role. I think you can really treat him as sort of a de facto 6th receiver if you need him to be. So yeah, the numbers to me would seem to indicate you're going to keep five, but then, you're going to end up putting probably a couple of talented guys on the practice squad where you risk losing them. So it feels really wide open, and I don't know what it seems like to you being there at camp, but like it feels like so many of these position groups with the new coaching staff in place, like there's a ton of competition, and it really doesn't feel like there's a lot of this guy is definitely getting a spot.
Yeah, yeah, and I would say that what we observed yesterday with the wide receivers in that you know uh, Russell Gage and Calvin Ridley are just basically like separated from the other wide
Yeah.
receivers like half the time. Like they're just over there working on specific red zone stuff with Matt Ryan and AJ McCarron. While the other receivers are going through some other drills and things like that. So those two are kind of clearly safe and it's very secure in their top two spots. But I would say the clear cut number three seems to be Alameda Zacchaeus right now. But then those other two spots are pretty much wide open. I know Torrey McElhaney of the Athletic, remarked that on Thursday and Friday that Christian Blake was really impressing. Yesterday, I think Austin Trammell really stood out. Today, it was kind of split between Frank Darby and Trammell. They were both doing a lot of good stuff. And Chris Rowland, honestly, today had some really good receiving work. But it's important to note that the guys like Chris Rowland and Trammell, they're a little bit smaller, a little bit quicker. They're going to be more impressive at this part of camp when we're not getting full contact, when we're not getting press coverage, these sorts of things. These guys are going to, this benefits them, being in shorts without full contact. They're going to look spectacular, and it doesn't always translate to pads. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but we can only report on what we see, and we haven't seen pad work yet. I think the first day of that will be Tuesday. So
Yeah, and I think that's a good disclaimer. I know everybody probably needs that disclaimer. I wrote that Training Camp Heroes piece about a week ago before this started, and looking back at some of those guys that I was convinced, or everybody watching this was probably convinced was going to make the team and make an impact. It's good not to get too attached, but it's also a good sign that they have guys who are legitimately impressive even this early on. And I think for somebody like Roland, it's going to be really interesting to see if he can force his way into that punt return competition, because I really have Avery Williams written in there in very strong pencil right now. So we'll see what happens.
yeah, today, an update on that. Same three guys as yesterday. We're back returning kicks and punts. I think they basically know that Cordell Patterson's going to be the kick returner, so he's not really even getting involved in a lot of special team stuff. In terms of like being back there to return stuff, I think they basically know what they have in Patterson. He doesn't need the reps. But it was Avery Williams, as Dave mentioned, who I think probably should be the favorite because this new coaching staff brought him in. He's their draft pick. And I think it's probably easier to say you're going to keep a sixth corner versus a sixth wide receiver with this offense. But,
Yeah.
whoever was the returner, I think, is going to be that roster spot, whether it's a sixth receiver or corner. But, I agree with Dave. I think Avery Williams arguably had the most impressive college career as a returner. I think he had like 9 return touchdowns over 3 seasons or something absurd like that. He had 4
Crazy,
last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, obviously, Avery Williams is very talented. Had some good returns in practice. Chris Rowland obviously is a factor there. He was getting a lot of reps as well. And then starting on Saturday, Austin Trammell was also involved and had some good reps as well. So that competition will be fierce. And it looks like, maybe, I don't know if, I know Torrey McElhaney didn't mention Trammell as being involved in the competition on Thursday or Friday. So it seems like they added him on Saturday. So he must have done something that impressed them enough to insert him into that competition.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see too, thinking way ahead here, they're going to construct their practice squad. Are they going to keep 2 guys who are receivers with return potential? Probably not. So it's going to be, that feels like a battle right there that's worth watching too, is Trammell versus Roland, especially because the coaching staff that picked up Roland isn't here anymore.
Right. Yeah, and they're somewhat similar players. I think Trammell, obviously at Rice, he played a little bit of a higher level competition than Chris Rowland at Tennessee State, but they're similar build. I think Trammell has a little bit more size. Trammell, has just amazing sort of elusiveness. Like it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
And his explosiveness is excellent. Whereas his long speed isn't great, but I think Rowland has better long speed. Also good, also good explosive, just not quite as elite with his footwork as someone like Trammell. But it really depends on what the team is looking for, and Avery Williams is definitely in that conversation too. So that's another fierce battle, and it's nice to have the competition to where it's not just a sure thing. And it's also nice that it looks like they're going to give it to a good punt returner instead of, sorry, Brandon Powell and your brother if you're watching still, but, Brandon Powell had no business being the punt returner. So
I think it's one of those things where he did some good things in that role, but I do think that the Falcons over the years have repeatedly said, we are not going to invest in this, even kick returner really, but we're not going to think hard about, putting some money or some draft picks toward this. And they sort of got the results that they deserve from that over the years. So yeah, it'll be really nice to see Patterson returning kicks. Obviously he's a legend, but any of those guys, Williams, Trammell or Rowland, seem like they could be a great punt returner. So
yeah, absolutely. Quick interlude here for a question from Dan the Man. He said he's asking about Javian Hawkins. Yeah, so Hawkins yesterday was very impressive. Had a touchdown in 11 on 11 where he just kind of dusted everyone. It was very impressive. Quieter day today. He was working mostly with the second team. So I just wasn't really paying much attention to the second team other than just kind of seeing who was over there, to be honest with you. So can't remark on how well he looked there, but I know he and Caleb Huntley were kind of splitting the reps with the second team, and I saw Huntley get some carries too, and he looked good. He's definitely more of a bigger physical back, and I think there's a lot more competition for that role, which hurts his chances. But I think Hawkins has been impressive, and that's definitely someone to watch. And with the team getting rid of Tony Brooks-James, it seems like his path to the roster is pretty clear at this point. So as kind of the only sort of elusive speed back on the team. So definitely interesting there. All right, let's see. So moving on, I know people were asking a ton of questions about the offensive line and the defensive line, and to be totally honest with you guys, they seem to be, I don't know if they're actually hiding those two units from the media and from fans, because both the days I've been there now, they have been just stuck in the back right corner behind several groups of 11 on 11 and people standing around, and it's almost impossible to see anything that's going on over there. And it may just be that for these public practices, they want to put the exciting quote-unquote stuff front and center, which makes sense from that angle. But I haven't seen much, but what I can tell you from 11 on 11 is that Matt Hennessy looks pretty good. He looks, very quick. Very, very confident at center. He's definitely getting almost all, if not all, of the first team reps there. And he was climbing to the second level and hitting poles and doing some good things out there. So obviously not full contact at this point, but Hennessy is someone I think who is impressing early. Seems to be maybe more of the heavy favorite for starting center than maybe we were anticipating. But what are your thoughts on Hennessy at this point in camp, Dave?
Yeah, I think, first of all, thank you for the observations, because I would not know how he was doing otherwise. So that's great to hear. And I think, I did expect Hennessy to win this job. I like Dahlman a lot. I was interested to see, I believe you tweeted earlier today, Kevin, that Dahlman was getting some second team reps at guard.
Yes.
Yep. And so that was kind of one of my big questions heading into it, is I know a lot of folks felt that, his best fit is center, but whether they would try him at guard, especially with Mayfield getting some time at right tackle right now. So that's encouraging to me. And that also is an indicator to me potentially that, Hennessy's got a pretty well-paved path to the starting job at center. And I think he'll get it. I think he'll hopefully do well in it. I had high hopes for him last year, and obviously didn't get much of a chance to play, but I still think he's a good player.
Yeah.
And then to see, if Dahlman does get serious reps at guard, if they keep Mayfield at tackle, I could see him pushing his way into the conversation there too. It just wasn't, on my radar for him necessarily to be heavily involved in a guard battle. So we'll see if he continues to just work with the reserves and he ends up being, a versatile reserve, or whether he actually pushes somebody like Andrews for a job. So
yeah, I'm interested in that as well. I think it's Dahlman was clearly, they view him as a center. I did manage to snap a picture from earlier in practice. They were doing snapping drills and some, some sort of, that sort of stuff early on in practice. And there were 3 guys who lined up at center. One, of course, was Matt Hennessy. He was snapping to Matt Ryan. Drew Dahlman was the quote-unquote second center. He was snapping to A.J. McCarron. And then we also had Joe Skolthorpe, the undrafted guard. He appears to be the third center because he was snapping to Felipe Franks, and it was just those 3 guys doing that. So that's your center update for everyone that's been, locked in on the center battle there. So yeah, it does seem right now like Hennessy's a pretty heavy favorite, and it seems like the team also does like Drew Dahlman, and they're maybe trying to find a way to get him on the field or, cross-train him at guard. And I know, there was some concern about his size. I would say that he doesn't, look significantly lighter or smaller than any of the other sort of guard guys that were out there. It wasn't like it was super noticeable that it was, oh, Drew Dahlman, he's tiny or anything like that. So I mean,
he's the size of us.
Yeah. He's just like us. He's a normal sized person, but no,
poor guy.
Yeah. But I think he looked fine. He didn't. It didn't look like his size was an issue to me. I know there were some people claiming that he was playing in like the low 290s, and he looks pretty much. I mean, maybe not quite as big as Hennessy, but I think Dahlman's probably playing right around 300 right now. So that's pretty standard zone blocking scheme, guard, center weight. So it's a little on the light side. Nothing that I would be concerned about, though. Did want to throw in a quick plug for you guys tuning in to please like and subscribe. Those metrics definitely help us out. We appreciate that. Check out the community Discord server. The link to that is in the show description if you want to chat Falcons football with your fellow fans. And check out the Patreon page, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live, to unlock exclusive show perks, exclusive content, and support us on a monthly basis. We do appreciate that as well, guys. Thank you very much. So let me get to another question real quick from DST Productions. They ask, how do you guys see the safety group shaking out? Does Richie Grant eventually take over a starting spot, or does Pease bring him along slowly? Yeah, so I can talk about what I've seen and then let Dave kind of weigh in on that, because I know he's going off of basically what we've observed. But Richie Grant is, the only rookie that's not being forced to play with the second team right now is Kyle Pitts. And I think it's just like you can't keep Kyle Pitts off the field. Like, he's just so much better than other options. He just kind of impressed so much at minicamp and OTAs that they're like, all right, we're not even going to pretend that you have to earn your spot. Like, you just are the best at your position. So other than him, Richie Grant, I guess Jalen Mayfield technically is the other one that's playing with the first team. That's because of injuries, but those would be the 2 exceptions. But otherwise, every other rookie is basically playing with the second team at this point. Richie Grant has looked good against the second team. He's looked like you would hope against a lower level of competition. He's been kind of a standout there. I think he had a forced fumble on Friday. He had a really great coverage rep in 11-on-11 with the first team against I can't remember which receiver it was. It was actually Chris Rowland that was getting work in there with the first team as well. And Rowland just like made this diving sideline catch like that got fully off the ground, and Richie Grant was right there. Grant was actually lined up as like a slot corner on the play, and Rowland came down with the ball and it was a catch, but Grant was absolutely right there. Rowland had to kind of jump into the air to have a chance at it. So nothing alarming in terms of Richie Grant at this point. Just most rookies, I think this coaching staff is going to make them earn their first team reps, and I don't think that's a surprise. But I think we're going to see a 3 safety rotation with Daron Harmon probably getting the most snaps of any safety. That would be my guess. I think he's very versatile and most proven of all the options, so I think he's going to be the guy that's kind of out there. And then Eric Harris, who's the biggest safety, maybe other than TJ Green. And then Richie Grant will be the third guy. And I don't know how that's going to shake out in terms of total snaps, other than that I think Harmon's going to get the most. But those I think are going to be the top 3 safeties, and they're going to all play a lot on Sundays. So yeah, Dave, what are your thoughts on how they seem to be kind of distributing the snaps there at safety?
I'd agree with you. I'd say if you look back at Pease's defenses in Tennessee, which are the 2 most recent examples, the third safety, both years he was there, played about 30% of the snaps defensively. So he's certainly going to use all 3 of these guys. I think that your hunch about Harmon being sort of the most reliable guy, the guy that's going to play the most, I think is going to be borne out. And I think with Grant versus Harris, it's just a question of where Grant's at to start the season. I think if he has impressed the coaching staff enough and shown that he's ready to go right away, they're going to want that playmaking in the lineup. And I think he'll end up being, the de facto starter with Harmon, with Harris picking up, again, like 30-40% of the defensive snaps. They'll have some three safety sets. They'll rotate these guys around. But to me, my expectations for Richie Grant are probably second or third to Eric Robinson's. I know he's really excited about his potential, but I think he's going to be a really good player. I think he'll be a really good player as soon as this year. And I do think by the end of the summer, he'll force his way into, a quote unquote starting job. Just depends on how Pease is going to roll this thing out.
Yeah, I agree there for sure. And speaking of secondary players, we have a question from Don Emery. Don, thanks for tuning in, man. We appreciate you. He says, who was at cornerback 2 today? I assume you mean outside, and it was Fabian Moreau again. Moreau seems to be very much the favorite for that spot. But it does give me an opportunity to talk about another corner who has been really impressive thus far, and that is fourth-round rookie Darren Hall, who over the course of the last 2 days has broken up, I think, more targets towards Kyle Pitts than anyone else. Hall's just played Pitts really aggressively. Hall doesn't have standout size or anything like that, but he's just been really aggressive with Kyle Pitts, and that's, I think, worked well because I don't think the quarterbacks are used to kind of putting the ball, where only Kyle Pitts can get it yet. So there's been some overthrows. There's been some, really nice tight throws, but Hall has been able to get his hands on some of those balls, and I think he's coming around very quickly. So I think Darren Hall is definitely someone to watch as a guy who could make his way onto the first team, either at outside or inside corner, quicker than we would expect for a fourth-round pick. But yeah, other guys, I know Adam Holloway in the chat mentioned Chris Williamson. He had an interception yesterday off a tipped pass, and I think he has been, of the other corners, the guys working with the second team unit, other than maybe Darren Hall, who's kind of splitting work. Chris Williamson seems to be the most impressive so far. So yeah, what do you think about Darren Hall impressing Dave? Do you think he's got a chance to work his way into the starting lineup, or do you think he'll just be kind of like the first man up in the rotation?
I think he'll be first man up. Not because I don't believe in his talent, but I think, the Falcons are probably going to go with a more veteran starter to start things off. I don't have any particular reason to believe that other than the fact that they have, talked up Oliver quite a bit. I think they have expectations for how they're going to use him. And I think you'll see something like Terrell and Moreau outside and Oliver inside quite a bit. But I do think they'll find a way to get Hall on the field. And I think it's a really good sign that he's playing so aggressively this early on, because I think his aggressiveness and his ability to make plays on the ball is one of the big things they liked about him. So if you're Darren Hall and you're challenging Kyle Pitts in training camp, like, sure, it's training camp, but that's a really good sign for your future. And I think long term, he's definitely going to push for a starting job. I just think this year he'll probably be the team's de facto top reserve. And I don't know what that means, especially with Avery Williams expected to get a job, maybe with Chris Williamson pushing a little bit. I don't know what that all means for Kendall Sheffield, and I don't know if you've seen him out there at all, but
yeah,
he's the guy I have a tougher time figuring out, is he going to be able to really push for a starting job, or is he maybe even going to get pushed off the roster? I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kendall Sheffield does have a lot of competition. Sheffield has bulked up, and they list him at DB. They list a couple players at DB, and I think in years past when the Falcons listed someone at DB on the roster, I think it was like they just didn't bother updating it, and it was an error.
Yeah.
This coaching staff is very specific about where they list players. I don't think they list people wrong. So there were 3 players listed at DB. Sheffield was one of them. TJ Green, another one who I think is mostly a safety, but I think maybe those are players that they envision having kind of maybe a slot defender role, a versatile role. And Sheffield has kind of been what he's been thus far, which is he'll have some flashy plays. He had a pass breakup today. I think he had a nice pass breakup in 11-on-11 yesterday, and then he will get burned inexplicably for someone with 4.3 speed. Like I think, I'm trying to remember who it was who burned him today that I didn't think like should have been able to do that. I think it was like what was it? I'm gonna scroll through my tweets here, but it was it was interesting to see that he like was not, he doesn't seem to it's Christian Blake who beat him down. I feel like Christian Blake's not really a burner. Blake didn't manage to bring the catch in, but it just that's kind of what I think Sheffield is at this point. He's kind of a high variance player, and it's possible that Dean Pease is more amenable to that sort of play style because this is going to be an opportunistic defense. It's probably going to be relying on turnovers more than we would like to keep things from getting out of hand, but that's kind of what I've seen from Sheffield thus far, is just a little bit up and down.
Yeah, and I know it seems like Oliver obviously has had his moments too, which is I always, whenever I see Isaiah Oliver's name in a tweet, I'm like, here we go, because the responses to it are always great. Falcons fans hold
Oh my
eternal
god,
grudge.
dude! Yeah, I had to make sure to like point out because he got beat on like a rep early, and people were just like dunking on him, and I was like, all right, well, what about all these other? No one bothered to look at the ones where he broke up a pass and did some other stuff. Like he's been fine.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting too with him. Like, I don't know if he's going to be here for the long haul, so I don't know if that changes the team's plans for him at all. But my expectation all along is that he's going to be a starter in this defense. So it's interesting to see, like, with the competition there, how that's going to shake out. I'll be really interested to see what happens when the pads go on.
Yeah, me too. And that's kind of the next thing that we need to see, see some contact, see some other things. But we did have, speaking of contact and guys, getting out there hitting, Adam Holloway asking about, what did the nickel, defensive line look like? And I did get, some glimpses of both of those packages during 11 on 11. So right now with Dante Fowler still out on the COVID list, it was Stephen Means and Jacob Twatty-Mariner at outside linebacker, defensive end, depending on what you prefer to call it. In 11 on 11 to start, Grady Jarrett obviously was one of the interior rushers, and then it was really kind of a timeshare between Marlon Davidson and John Kaminsky. They both got a lot of work on the interior, so I think both of those guys are going to factor in there for sure. And then in terms of run package, we had Means still, so it looks like Means is probably going to be the number 2 pass rusher even when Fowler comes back. And then, excuse me, then we also had, wait, I lost the tweet. Okay, yeah. Marlon Davidson, John Kaminsky were also playing kind of 3-4 defensive end roles in the run package, and then Tyler Davison at nose tackle, with Brandon Copeland actually playing kind of a Sam drop-down line of scrimmage role as well. So that I think is a very interesting group there. But I do you have any takes on those defensive line groups, Dave? I know some people were like literally in panic mode when they saw it. I was like, guys, if depending on how you feel about Dante Fowler too, I guess, but yeah.
I mean, this is my biggest ongoing concern. There's plenty of reasons, obviously, to be concerned about the Falcons this year, but like, to me, the pass rush is really just such a huge question mark, because you're going to be so dependent on players who either are solid. Like, we know Stephen Means is a capable player. I thought he had some good games last year. Certainly, I'm glad he's back in Atlanta. But, you also know that there's sort of a cap level of upside with him as a consistent down-to-down force, getting after the quarterback. And you know that other guys on this defense aren't proven yet. They might be really good at it. They might be plenty capable. We haven't seen a lot of Brandon Copeland, obviously, as a pass rushing force in his career. But yeah, this is the group that you look at them and you say it's really dependent on Fowler being healthy and capable. It's really dependent on a lot of guys having quote unquote career years, and it's really dependent on Pease being creative with how he brings pressure, and figuring out the best way to do that. So I look at that group and I don't panic per se, but yes, I have some concerns about it that are going to have to be alleviated in season. Like that's the one group like I have a hard time getting super excited about until I see them in game action.
Yeah, it's really hard, first of all, to evaluate the defensive line when they're hiding them like so far away that I can barely make out numbers, and then second, there's no pads, so it's just there's not really contact, there's not really anything more than drills going on with those guys, and there's definitely some stuff going on in 11 on 11 that you can draw observations from, but until contact actually happens, until preseason, that's really going to be the time we're going to get a lot of meaningful information about that group. But Dave, I know you got to take off soon. I appreciate you working the show and stuff into your schedule. Anything that he's at the Falcoholic, folks, Dave Choate. Anything that you want to plug? Anything before you sign off?
No, just I hope everybody here is following Kevin, certainly, and Adnan as well, and looking forward to seeing what camp coverage you continue to bring, and talking about camp highlights and standouts over the next few days. So thanks for all the work you're doing.
Yeah, man, appreciate you as well for setting it all up and helping me, wrangle the Falcons for credentials, which, guys, I can announce that I will be in the press tent, able to take at least a few videos on Tuesday, Wednesday. That we have had that officially approved. So thank you, Dave, and Gina Thomas as well for diligence on behalf of making sure that the team was going to respond to our requests. So thank you, guys.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it. Thanks again, Kev.
Yep, absolutely. Have a good one, Dave.
Take it easy.
All right, guys. Well, I can go for a bit longer here. Let's switch up the screen. Oh, wait, well, it's not centered, so I'll have to fix that. You can't have the title not centered. But yeah, if you guys have any more questions or anything like that, we can go for a bit longer here. Give you some more of my observation from the last bit here. All right, there we go. That's all set. All right, there we go. Yeah, guys. So yeah, I know Adam, you had another question about Bullard getting some work with the first team, and yes, he did get some reps inside with the first team today. Also, rookie Dedokumbo Ogundiji, he was getting some first team looks as well, more like in the base packages, but he was a guy that was getting rotated in there. And in terms of Taquan Graham, still languishing with the second team. Again, it's hard to see from far away, but he was playing a lot with the second team. And so was, Ogundiji and some of these other guys. But yeah, I think they're really making the rookies earn it, their chances with the first team. So just something to keep in mind there. I don't think it means that there's any issue with them necessarily. I think this is just a coaching staff that's like, look, you're going to have to earn it over the veterans. You're not just going to get on the field because of your draft stock. So, I know Hayden Hughes asking about Fabian Moreau. Moreau hasn't really gotten targeted that much, to be completely honest with you, and I think that's generally a good thing because it means whoever he's covering isn't open. But I haven't really gotten to see him get a lot of hands on ball on the football or really get challenged all that much so far. And I think that'll change, obviously. But so far, Moreau's kind of had a quiet camp, but I think quiet in a good way. He's playing with the ones entirely. Seems to kind of have that outside job locked up. So definitely someone to monitor in the preseason where I think he'll get tested more. Jason Gaines, Kevin, seeing any jumbo 3 tight end sets that can lead to good play action. I haven't seen any 13 actually run yet, and the way that they have it set up is they do a lot of motion. And they rotate a lot of guys in, so it's entirely possible I just haven't noticed it. But yeah, I mean, they're definitely working guys in. I mentioned it today that Kyle Pitts is playing kind of everywhere. He played out wide a lot. He played in the slot a lot, and they gave him some inline reps as well. I saw him blocking on a few run plays. Hayden Hurst also out there a lot. He had a couple nice catches today. And then I saw Lee Smith streaking downfield just wide open on one play. It might have been a second team play, I'm not sure, but he didn't get the target, but he was open. So just kind of that, tight end leak out sort of thing. But yeah, I expect at 13, they'll probably play about 10% of snaps. In 13, that's about what Arthur Smith did in Tennessee last year, and then they're probably going to be mostly 2 tight end, but it'll depend on the situation and probably the opponent to some extent too. Yeah, Ollie S. Excuse me. Has any player surprised you so far? I would say Austin Trammell at wide receiver. I talked about him a lot, so I won't spend too much time there, but he, I think, has been the most consistently impressive of the other wide receivers so far on the 2 days that I've covered in person. But the other one is really Quadri Olison, who has seems like he kind of has a stranglehold on the running back 2 job right now. He was getting a lot of carries with the first team. I didn't even see him with the second team at all. So it seems like he's basically the de facto RB2 right now. I think he has a role for this team. I think, we talked about it on earlier shows, but he has a similar build and a similar style to Mike Davis, not necessarily as accomplished as a receiver, although we did see him catch a few passes today and yesterday that, he looked comfortable doing that. So I think Olsen it surprised me, not that he's like competent or anything, just that he is getting such a prominent role early on. So that would be one guy who surprised me. And then the other would probably be Darren Hall on defense. Just, you never know what to expect from a 4th round rookie corner. But I think Hall is someone who's going to have a role this year, and could be a real nice surprise, as the first man up in the rotation, with so many corners playing these days. And there's likely to be, situations where you might need a dime corner, or you might need a corner to step in for a couple games. And I think it's looking right now like Hall is going to be that first man up. Okay, yeah, sorry, I lost your dono there for a second, Corey. So let me read that off real quick. Thank you, man. We do appreciate that. $5 from Corey Carter. He asks, what do you think about Christian Blake, Calvin Ridley, Olamide Zaccheaus, Russell Gage, Austin Trammell, and Frank Darby as the 6 wide receivers making the team, with Cordell Patterson obviously as a running back wide receiver combo? Yeah, I mean that sort of group is possible. The first 3 I think are pretty much locked in. Ridley, Zaccheaus, Gage, and I do find it hard to believe that Frank Darby is not going to make the team just because they spent a draft pick on him. And I think after today he's certainly been as good as any of the other sort of receivers that are competing. I guess the one that I know Tori said Blake had a good day on Friday. I didn't see it, so I can't really comment. I think he's certainly in the mix. I guess right now I'd be leaning Trammell as the 5th guy based on what I've seen. But I think I'm doing a roster projection soon, and I'll probably still have Tajay Sharp as the 5th guy just because I think they do want a little size. But I mean I don't know what Arthur Smith likes. I don't know how he likes to organize his roster. We haven't seen it yet. So it's entirely possible they keep Trammell just because they think he's the best player. But I do think, it's possible that we'll see it be someone like a Tajay Sharp or Jamon Moore, who did leave practice briefly today. It looked like he was just kind of getting worked on a little bit. It was either a knee or a calf thing. So I thought it could be cramps even. And, by the time that was over, I kind of lost track of him because we got into 11 on 11 and stuff like that. So something to monitor, Jamon Moore's status going forward. But, there's so many good guys out there. I think Roland impressed a lot too. So it's really too close to call now. But I think your prediction is a solid one if they keep 6. But I think it's more likely they keep 5 unless the returner is Chris Roland or Austin Trammell. I think they're probably keeping 5 receivers. For the reason you mentioned is Patterson really can play wide receiver in a pinch. So he's sort of that sort of quasi wide receiver, an emergency wide receiver if you needed an extra guy. So it's really up in the air, and I think there's a lot of guys making a strong case, and we're gonna see how it plays out over the next week and then into the preseason here. So. Alden Karp, how did Matt Ryan play today? I thought Matt Ryan looked fine. There's not a lot of pressure out there or anything like that, but Ryan was on target. There were a lot of nice completions. There's nothing that matched the Kyle Pitts highlight catch the other day where Ryan put it in a perfect spot and it was just a beautiful route from Pitts. But I think Ryan looks good. There's zip on the passes. They were accurate. Nothing that I would be concerned about. Nothing that I would be overly excited about either. It's just the first couple training camp practices, but I thought Ryan was fine. And the other player I do want to mention because I thought they were very impressive despite what we already know, which is AJ Terrell continues to just be what you would hope for, which is the corner one. He picked off AJ McCarron, and it would have been a pick 6. He had several pass breakups. He just kind of was all over the place, doing all the things you would hope for from your number 1 corner. I'm very confident in his abilities, and I think he's going to have a great season. So that was another one that I was very impressed with again today. Guys. Jason Gaines, I'll get your question real quick. You got it in just under the bell here. But he says, any shotgun formations with three wide receivers, 2 running backs on the field at the same time? Didn't actually see. I don't think I've actually seen that package. I didn't really see many fullback or 21 sort of sets either, to be completely honest with you. It was mostly 12, almost entirely 12, honestly, and there was a little bit of 11 mixed in, what like you would expect from an NFL offense. That seems to be kind of just the trendy offensive formation right now. But I would say 12, honestly, was where they ran most of their plays. Hayden Hurst, Kyle Pitts got a ton of targets. Frank Darby got a bunch of targets. But I didn't actually see any of. I think that's 20 personnel with 3 wide receivers, 2 running backs. Didn't specifically see that. Didn't see a lot of fullback sets in 11 on 11. Wouldn't draw too many conclusions from that because again, it's not full contact, and it's also kind of hard to see Keith Smith behind the line. Especially today, they had the offense on the far side and the defense on the close side, so it was kind of hard to see the backfield from where I was standing on the hill. But I'll continue to look out for those sorts of personnel packages and keep reporting to you guys about what I see there. But guys, we just really appreciate you all. I appreciate everyone who came out to camp and said hi. It's always fun to meet you guys. We snapped a few pictures with some folks and just some good times. Just thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Like I said before, like and subscribe. Hit up the Patreon, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. And follow if you're not already following the show. It's at Falcoholic Live. Our normal show time is Wednesdays at 8:10 p.m. Eastern time. So after training camp stuff is kind of wrapped up in terms of I'll be here through Wednesday. Going forward, we'll go back to our normal Wednesday show time. Obviously, post-game shows as well. And we're going to continue doing our play-by-play shows for the preseason games. I know a lot of people are big fans of those, so that's a good time as well. But otherwise, guys, if you think of any more questions or anything like that, feel free to send them to me on Twitter. Always try to get to as many of those as I can throughout the day. And I will be back at camp on Tuesday and Wednesday in the press tent this time, so I should be able to send you some clips and some gifs and things like that, because I know you guys are thirsty for the video content, so keep an eye out for those as well. Like I said, guys, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. Again, thank you for tuning in. We will still have a recap show and other stuff like that tomorrow, but I'll be, once again relying on our other great Atlanta sports media folks. Big shout out to Tori McElhaney for her coverage. It's been very invaluable for the days that I haven't been approved to be there, because in case you guys don't know, the NFL is just very... there's a lot of rules right now about how many media members can actually be on the field on any given day. So we kind of have to share a little bit, and that's obviously fine. Just have to wait our turn and be patient, and the team was able to get me in this week, so I do appreciate them for working me in. So guys, until tomorrow, I'm Kevin Knight. Keep an eye out. I'm not sure exactly what the format it'll be, but I am doing an interview with Austin Trammell's wide receiver coach at Rice this afternoon. So I'll either have that up as an episode of Falcoholic Live, sort of a recorded interview, or I'll do it as a write-up. I'm not sure what his preference is at this point, but I'll have that up later so you can get some intel on perhaps the most impressive undrafted free agent of the class so far. So until tomorrow, guys, I'm Kevin Knight. See you next time on the Falcoholic Live. Have a good one, folks.